Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you do not know me, my name is Paula Pierre. I am a certified wholeness coach and founder of Beautifully Made, and this is my wonderful husband. What's your name?
Marcus.
Marcus. And first of all, let me just address the elephant in the room, okay? I know it's been a minute. It's been a hot minute. I think the last video that I put out was in November of 2022, and we are in August 20th of this recording, to be exact, of 2023. So it has been a long time. However, there is a reason for that, and that is, what's the reason, babe?
We had a baby.
So we had a baby boy on goodness, my brain, July 30th. July 30th. We had a very handsome, very cute baby boy, and so we just wanted to come on and record our birth story. There are a lot of birth stories here on YouTube, and I want to do this from a different kind of perspective. It's more raw and real, more conversational, but I want to focus in on faith and surrender. When my husband and I talk about that whole weekend surrounding our son's birth, you know, there are a lot of words we can use to describe that weekend, but the perspective that we want to come from is from the place of faith and surrender. So we're just going to talk. Like, this is not scripted. This is not, you know, certain point and a close. Like, this is literally just a conversation. Okay. So, I think I'll kick it off with, the first day. Okay. So, my due date was, July 28th, and throughout my pregnancy, well, probably more so second trimester, I was like, oh, he's going to come early. You know, he's going to come early. He's probably going to come mid-July. And you were saying the same thing too. Like, he's gonna come early, you know. So people would ask us, oh, when is your due date? We're like, oh, July 28th, but he'll probably come a little bit early, all the things, right? So fast forward to July, and you know, specifically mid-July comes rolling around, and there's no baby. There are no true contractions. There's nothing happening that would like indicate, okay, we're about to have a baby, right? So of course I feel crazy because I'm like, I've been saying mid-July for all this time, and you know, nothing's happening, yada yada yada, right? And so you know, we're just like, okay, it is what it is. Like, this baby's gonna come at the appointed time by the Lord. Like, that was the thing. That was the place I had to get to, where I just said, okay, it doesn't matter. Okay, he's not here, but those were my thoughts, right? And God has his appointed time for our son to enter into the world. So my due date rolls around, and on my due date we actually had a 40-week that day made 40 weeks, and we had an appointment with our midwife. So just as a side note, we had a midwife, and we also had a doula as well. So we go to the appointment with the midwife, and on the way to the appointment, I say to my husband, hey, I think I want to get an ultrasound at this appointment. I just want to make sure that his amniotic fluid level is good. I didn't think anything was wrong. There was nothing, you know, nothing like some super indicator that, you know, I wanted to do that, but I just thought about it. I did notice that he wasn't moving around as much in that kind of last week, but I just kind of said, okay, well, he's probably run out of space, right? So, you know, it's probably why he's not moving that much, right? He was moving, okay, but it just wasn't like what I was used to. So on the way, I say that to my husband, and I kid you not, like maybe 2 to 3 minutes later, we get a call from the midwife, and she's like, hey, the ultrasound team are about to leave the office for the day. Is there any reason why you would, you know, want to get an ultrasound? So I said, actually, I do want to get one. I've noticed that he hasn't been moving that much. And so she said, okay, I will tell them to go ahead and wait. At this point, we're probably about 3 minutes away from the facility anyway. So we get there. She does the ultrasound. the tech does the ultrasound, and then we get into the room with our midwife, and she tells us that baby boy's, and if you hear noises, okay, it's because he's on the side. But she tells us that his amniotic fluid level is low and that she is concerned about that. And they took my blood pressure twice. Was it twice?
Yep.
I think it was twice. And it was elevated, right? So between baby boy's decreased movement, low amniotic fluid, and my elevated blood pressure, what did she say to us, babe?
We need to go to the hospital. I'm going to check you into the hospital today, this afternoon, and we need to induce.
Okay. So here's the thing. Here's the thing, okay? I had a list of things that I was believing God for, right? And that list was actually posted on our refrigerator. I can't remember if I wrote it second trimester, third trimester, but I had that list on the refrigerator, okay? And one of the things on that list was no induction. I did not want to be induced. I wanted my body to do what it does, what it was designed to do by the Lord. I wanted to do it naturally. So, of course, I'm bummed, right? Because I'm like, I didn't want this. No. And, but it is what it is, okay? So my mother-in-law was actually in the waiting room. So we finish up the appointment, and we actually go out to meet her and, let her know that, okay, we're going to be induced. So we're going to go back to the house and pack our stuff. So honey, I'll let you kind of pick up from getting home, packing our stuff, all that.
So we get home, we pack our stuff, we head to the hospital, and of course my wife is kind of like, I can't believe this is happening. This is not how I planned it. And when we first got there, it was a little bit of a waiting game. We waited, for about we waited that night. Mm-hmm. And I think our midwife was like, okay, we're going to see about induction tomorrow or something like that.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So we were just kind of there like, okay, he's coming this weekend, Mm-hmm. We just didn't know exactly when. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so we're there, and there are dips in his heart rate, actually. There were some mm-hmm. dips on the monitor of his heart mm-hmm. rate. We're kind of like, okay. Mm-hmm. Now, my wife did not want to do a C-section at all. She did not want to do that. But increasingly, as this was happening with the dip in his heart rate and the fluid levels becoming lower, that was becoming more of an option. And I was actually discussing that with our midwife privately before we even talked to her about it. And I already knew, in my spirit, I knew, I was like, okay, this is going to end up being a C-section. Long story short, our midwife is like, okay, we need to do this now. Mm-hmm. And well,
let's back up to Saturday for a second. Because mm-hmm. when did that conversation happen with our midwife about me? Was that Sunday morning, the day he was born, or was that Saturday night?
It was Saturday night. It was
and
Saturday
I slept
night.
on it? Did I give me a chance? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
you slept on it for the epidural, I think.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna pause real quick, because hubby's going into kind of like the ending of it. So I kind of want to back up just a little bit into Saturday. Like, so we're at the hospital. It's myself, of course, my husband, and my mother-in-law is actually there as well. And nothing's really happening. Like, there's no real progression taking place in my body. And that's what everybody was really looking for, is a sign of progression. Now, let me back up just a little bit more to Friday. And so, I had to get a cervical check because my midwife wanted to know where I was, right? And for those of you who don't know, I don't think I've shared this on this channel, but I have a history of what's called vaginismus. And so that affects your pelvic floor. And so I'll just say this. With that being considered, my midwife was not able to fully complete the cervical check. So she did not know where I was. And so that plays a big role in everything that happened, because without her knowing if my body's even progressing, because my body kind of won't let her do what she needs to do, and then emotionally it's just really high for me. All of that played a factor. It's hard to make a concrete decision, when you just don't know. And so Saturday comes around, and nothing's really happening, nothing's really changing in my body that would indicate that I could go into labor, naturally, and deliver him vaginally, which is what I wanted to do. And so originally, our midwife did speak to us, very candidly about the situation, and said that, we just don't want to get to an emergency situation. Like, that was the thing. Like, we don't want it to get to an emergency C-section, because I'm already full term, all of that type of stuff. The fluid's low, decreased movement, all of these things. And so we just don't want it to get to an emergency. But she said, before we go down the road of C-section, I'm going to do everything I can to try and get you to deliver this baby, vaginally, right? And naturally, she knew my birth preferences, and so she really wanted to honor that. She really wanted to honor my birth preferences as much as humanly possible. But at the same time, of course, she has to make sure that she's doing what's safe for baby and, for me as well. So, okay, so now, I think it was Saturday night. Mm-hmm. Did I sleep on it? Did she let me sleep on it? Or did we get a chance to sleep on it? Or was it Sunday morning that we were like, that she came in and was like...
It was Sunday morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Sunday morning rolls around, and she comes into the room. Now there's a lot of details in the midst of all this, y'all. So we're just giving you guys a high level overview of what happened, and we're going to get into the faith and the surrender part of it, but we just want to give the high level scope of details, that really highlight, the weekend, if you will. So she comes in. There's another midwife that worked with her as well. She comes in, nurses come in, and they have a real heart to heart, with me. And basically you're like, listen, you're not progressing, right? Water hasn't broken. They can't do a cervical check to see if anything's happening. And she tells me the dreaded words that I need to go ahead and have a C-section. And so, before I go into my reaction to that, go ahead, babe. Your reaction,
I kind of felt in my spirit all along that it was going to go down the route of a C-section. And to be perfectly honest, I wanted a C-section just because of where we were at in terms of the fluid levels being low, and just really to get the baby out as soon as possible, to avoid any complications or anything of the sort. So when I heard C-section, I was like, okay, all right. It didn't take me by surprise. It may have taken her, I want to say by surprise. It kind of was like maybe a gut punch for my wife, because she did not want that at all. Mm-hmm. She said numerous times during pregnancy, she said, I do not want a C-section. I do not want a C-section. Mm-hmm. I want to have this baby naturally, and that's that. But deep down, I kind of knew. I was like, okay, it's going to end up going down this route, just because of everything with the cervical check and not progressing the way she should have been, and not even be able to check. So... Mm-hmm. Once, our midwife said that to her and the other nurses, I was kind of like, okay, now we got to get you to act quickly and be like, okay, so we can get this done. But it wasn't that easy. It wasn't easy, because my wife was like, I really don't want to do it this way. And I stressed to my wife, I was like, hey, we need to really get this done now. I tried to say it in such a way that I was still gentle, yet, firm from the standpoint of, we need to do this as soon as possible. And not trying to sound fearful at the same time. Mm-hmm. So she finally agreed, reluctantly, but of course knowing that this was the best way to proceed. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. And,
So I'm going to give my reaction real quick. So I looked at my midwife and was like, nope. No. Mm-mm. I can't do it. I cannot do it. I cannot do it. I cannot do it. And everybody's looking at me like... we have to do this. Like, this is no longer a potential thing. This is where we are. And we're gently telling you where we are. Like, like my husband said, gentle yet firm at the same time. Like, no, this is actually where we are. Like, we don't have any other options. There's nothing else that we can do. We've exhausted the time. We've exhausted, just what can feasibly be done. And, it was hard for me for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's hard when somebody's telling you like, hey, you didn't do anything wrong. Your body is basically just not cooperating. Like, right? Like, let's just tell it how it is. Like, your body's not doing what we all want it to do. We all, want this to be what you want it to be. But your body's not doing it. And so, of course, you can't just keep a baby in just to keep a baby in, at this point. Especially, I was already 40 weeks. I was already 2 days.
He's looking at us as
he's
we're
looking
speaking.
at us. So
He woke up.
we're talking about you. I was already, at full term, and our midwife even said it, if this was a couple of weeks earlier, then, maybe things would have been a little bit, different, handled a little bit differently, but I was already at full term. It was already, I was already there, and we had to get this baby out. And I cried, y'all. I mean, I was in the hospital bed, just clenched to the side of it, just in full-fledged tears. Okay. On top of all of this, I experienced something that I would have never imagined would have happened at this stage in my life. And that is my father passing away. So my father unexpectedly passed away on June 10th. And there was, of course, a lot of emotion for the both of us, family and stuff, surrounding that. So all of this is coming into this whole experience, right? And so I just felt in that moment when they're like, hey, this is what we have to do. I just felt so defeated. I felt drained. I felt like I have nothing left, Let's see, you guys, if he's gonna let us keep going.
We'll keep going. We'll keep going.
Okay, so
if anything, I'll pick him up in a little bit.
Okay, so I don't know, man.
Go ahead, keep talking. I'll pick him up.
Okay. Okay. So I felt very just defeated and just in a place where I was just tired. There was a lot of emotion surrounding. Oh, there was a lot of emotion, surrounding my father's passing, and now we get to this place and things are not going the way that I desired, you know what I mean? And that I prayed for. And that was the thing. I felt like, oh my gosh, like I was praying for this. I was believing God for no C-section, no, and I just felt like everything that I was believing God for, it was like God didn't even hear me. It was almost like, it didn't even matter. Right. And, but it did matter to God. And I'm gonna get to that again. We get into the faith and surrender part, but so she tells us about C-section. I get to the place where, I look at my husband. It took a while. Okay. But I finally get to the place where I'm like, all right, you can, I get to the place where I'm like, okay, we can go ahead and do the C-section. So he goes out and he tells the midwife that we can go ahead and do the C-section. So
you can continue.
Any other responses?
Go ahead. You got it.
Okay. So the C-section is scheduled for later that day. And we get to they come in, they do the epidural. And I got through the epidural. That was, that was interesting. But the anesthesiologist, was really good. He was really quick. And I do that, and they wheel me back to the OR. And the biggest thing that was really difficult for me is the feeling of... Hold on, y'all. Okay. So back to what I was saying about the OR. So they wheel me into the OR, and there was a point where, once the medicine kicks in, where you don't feel anything from like the chest area down. And I could kind of feel my arms and my hands. I could feel my arms and my hands, and of course move my head, obviously. But everything else in my body was completely numb. Like, I didn't feel a thing. And y'all, I got scared. I got real nervous, okay? Like, I felt the anxiety and the fear just rush over me. And there were two nurses. They were both of their nicknames were Cat. And one of them, she came, and I forgot what she told me, y'all, but she held my hand and she was saying something to me. And I did not want to let her hand go. And I was just like, where's my husband? Please go get my husband. Please go get my husband. So she's like, I'm going to go get him right now. She was so sweet. And I was really freaking out because you can't feel a thing. And then on top of that, for those of you who have had a C-section, or you know, they put a drape, in front of you. And that drape, y'all, was like a half a inch away from my face. It was so close to my face that I was just like, oh my gosh, I feel claustrophobic. I can't feel my body. Like, I was just really freaking out, and I needed my husband. So she went and got him. He came in. He's like, babe, I'm here. So he starts like squeezing my hand. So I tell him, babe, keep squeezing my hand, just keep, because it was a good distraction. And then the other nurse, she came at some point, and I asked her, can you go to the other side of me and go squeeze the other hand, right? And so they're just squeezing my hand through the whole thing. And they go ahead and start, the procedure. And they told us in the first 5 to 10 minutes that baby would be out. And then the rest of the time would just be like stitching me up, stuff like that. So I was still dealing with that anxiety. I was still dealing with that fear, for sure. And there was a point, well, I'm gonna have my husband kind of give his perspective of the OR and that whole thing.
Yeah, the OR was, a lot of nurses, attendants, doctors, or whoever, midwives were there. Mm-hmm. And I remember going straight to where my wife was, behind that curtain. So I didn't really get a chance to absorb a lot of what was in the OR. I just remember hearing, well, of course, comforting my wife and playing worship music.
Oh, yeah, he did. He did, yeah.
And I'm hearing the doctor saying, I see a head,
mm-hmm.
And we're starting to pull. And all of a sudden, like seconds later, we hear our son screaming. I remember telling my wife, that's our baby screaming. And she was still kind of in and out of it. You know?
Yeah. I think they give you like morphine or something.
Yeah, they gave her a lot of morphine.
He probably was, that guy behind me was probably like, she's freaking out. Let me give her some more morphine.
They had my wife doped up pretty good.
I was really doped up, yeah.
But it was a cool, surreal experience, and I was able to record a few seconds of him coming out, and they, as soon as they pulled him out, and he's just screaming. I remember our midwife saying, he's got some good lungs on him, the way he's screaming.
Yeah.
And So that was a unique experience, and
Yeah. So there was a point, and this is when I want to get into the faith and surrender. I probably have to make a separate video if you're curious about just how my postpartum is going, all of that. That'll be a separate video. But there was a point where I felt again like everything was just too much, and I said to my husband, "Pray in the spirit." And so we both began to pray in the spirit. And when I tell you, that broke the anxiety and the fear that was in the room. Like it just, like there was just a peace that came over me. And I knew that God was with me. And this is what I was talking about earlier, is that even though things were not going the way that I desired for them to go, God was still there, and he proved it to me in that, not that he had to prove anything. God never has to prove a thing. But in that moment, as we began to pray in the spirit, and God like I'm telling you, it was like the peace of God just came rushing over me and removed all of the fear, all of the anxiety. And it was just, we didn't care who was in the room. We didn't care who hurt us. We didn't care. I mean, like there were plenty of people, like my husband said, plenty of people in the room, right? We don't know if they were believers. We don't know, what they believed or, whatever. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. And this kind of goes into just the faith and the surrender part of this whole experience, is that, if I'm being honest, and you all know I'm very transparent on my channel with you all about my life. And so there is a level of trauma that I'm working through as it relates to that whole weekend. I am so grateful and so blessed to have a healthy son, that I made it through surgery. I've never been through surgery before, so that was a whole new experience for me. But I'm grateful that I made it through safely. He made it through safely. All is well. We've been at home. I've been recovering. All the things. Like he is truly healthy, right? And so I give God all the glory for that. But if I'm being honest, there definitely is a level of trauma that is attached to that weekend for me. And that's something that I have to work through and have been working through, with the help of the Lord, and my husband's intercession, for me, and others that, know who have been praying and interceding as well. And so, it's definitely an experience that I won't forget. that is for sure. It wasn't easy. It wasn't, but I think when you are a believer, you have like the scripture that we say, right? Things like, not my will, Lord, but let your will be done. We say his strength is made perfect in our weakness. All the scriptures that we use to encourage somebody else, all the scriptures that we use to encourage ourselves, in certain seasons of life, it's when we are going through that those scriptures really truly come to life. And it was in that weekend that God showed me that his will is greater than my own, and I, again, I had to kind of look back and reflect on the weekend and see how God really did show up for me. He really did show up for me. And I'm grateful. And it doesn't matter if it didn't go down the way that I wanted it to. The fact that we are healthy, the fact that we are safe, the fact that we are at home, the fact that, just, everything just going so well. I'm recovering well, all of those things, right? Like, this is proof that God showed up. And a lot of times, we miss God because we don't surrender. I had to surrender. Like, I had to get to the place where I was like, okay, like, I didn't want this, I didn't want that, you know, but I don't have a choice. I have to surrender, you know. And that was hard, you know. And that was hard. But you know, the Bible says that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And so when you truly, again, walk by faith, thank you, Holy Spirit. So surrender and faith are tied together, right? When I thought about this video and I thought about talking about it from a perspective of faith and surrender, I looked at them as two separate things, but Holy Spirit just reminded me, no, those are actually things that are joined together. Why? Because when you truly are walking by faith, you are in a place of surrender, a place where you've given up your will. You've given up your agenda. That's what faith is. When you say, okay, Lord, I'm just going to walk. I don't see the way. I don't see how. I don't see one foot in front of the other. I don't see it. I don't see it at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm going to trust that when I step my foot forward, that there is something there for me to land on. There's something there for me to step on. So faith and surrender actually go hand in hand. In order for you to, if you truly have faith, that means you are truly in a place of surrender. You are truly in a place where you are saying, okay, Lord, whatever you want to do. And my husband was in that place, right? He was like, all right, you know, whatever needs to be done. But I wasn't there because I wanted to hold on to what I wanted and the whole experience, you know? And so, yeah, I'm going to have my husband kind of interject. And we're wrapping this up, y'all. We're almost done.
Yeah, you know, it's when we fully surrender, that's when God can move, because God's not going to force us to surrender anything. He's going to say, all right, I'm going to keep my hands off until you give it over to me. I'm not going to snatch it out of your hand, but as soon as you turn it over to me, surrender, then I can move. So you see, and again, the Word of God says without faith, it's impossible to please God. So if you don't surrender, it's impossible for you to exhibit faith, and then at the same time, impossible to please God at the same time. So, yeah.
So that's it, you guys. You know, we just wanted to kind of share again the story. You know, again, a lot of people have their birth stories out on YouTube and they give more detail, but we kind of want to just give the highlights of it, but again, really come at it from that faith and surrender perspective, because again, that's the place that we had to, you know, to get to, right? Like, my husband had to have faith and surrender from the perspective of being a husband and being a father and trusting God that, okay, you know, my wife is going into surgery and everything's going to be okay. And, you know, different things are like, he had to watch all of these things happening, you know, to me. He had to watch that, you know, and then of course, you know, for me actually going through it, you know, I have a different, you know, experience in terms of the faith and surrender aspect of it. So we hope that this video in some way has blessed you or encouraged you. I am looking forward to what God is going to do, you know, moving forward with this channel. You know, be on the lookout for some things. I'm again slowly but surely getting back into the groove. Being a mom being a mom is a blessing. It also has its, you know, tiring moments, all of that. For those of you who are moms out there, you understand, you know, but we are grateful. We are enjoying our son. We're getting to know his little personality. And it's just, it's a good time. It's a good time. So we'll let you guys go. Any closing words, honey?
No, you said it all.
All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this video, and I will see you all in the next one.
Take care, y'all.